Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He is the author of several books, no other than Mr. Joel Flanagan. Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Joel.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm fabulous like you, and can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Joel Flanagan Grannemann. My book series is called Servants of the Moon and Sun. The first book in the series is Talia, Heir to the Fairy Realm. The second book, Talia, On the Shore of the Sea. Both of those are out on Amazon right now. Book one is available through Kindle Unlimited. It's a epic fantasy retelling of Sleeping Beauty. The inspiring idea is, what if Maleficent was Aurora's mother, and Aurora being Sleeping Beauty, of course. And it just all rolls out from there. And what if she was her mother, and what if the curse still happens? Those were the two kind of inspiring ideas for the series and the books. And that's I'm in the middle of actually the we're working on the third book right now. My wife is my editor and the audio and is recording the audiobook for it. She's about halfway through the third book right now, so we're planning on a fall release in all formats: ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobook all at once. So that's where we are right now.
Wow, sounds interesting, Mr. Joel. Talia, how did you crafted it?
It it was very inspired by the live action movie Maleficent. Um, we were My wife and I were on vacation back in 2020, no, excuse me, 2019, September 2019, and we were watching this movie. And the movie wasn't that, it was pretty good. I kind of expect it was kind of what I expected it was be. It was very, very pretty, very well done. But at the end of the movie, as the credits were rolling, I thought of this idea. This would be a better movie if Maleficent was actually her mother, because there was this very mother-daughter relationship between Maleficent and Aurora. They were going for the fairy godmother sort of thing in the movie, but it really hit me. What if she was actually her mother, and how would that affect the story? How would that change it? And how would you get to these major plot points in the story if that was actually her daughter? And I I had written all through high school and college, but I stopped after I graduated from college and got engaged and got married, and just life got in the way. And it was always a source of depression for me. And I could never be in the right headspace to get back to writing. It was always a source of depression for me. So when I got this idea, it was extremely inspiring. I was in the right headspace. I had just moved to a different job where I had a lot more bandwidth to allow myself to be creative again. So I kind of went to bed, was half asleep for almost all night thinking about this idea, got up in the morning with this new laptop I had just gotten and brought with me, and started writing out this kind of outline, basic ideas for the characters and the story and the situations and everything, and then started writing. And it, have you ever had that feeling that you started something amazing and you just can't stop doing it? And that was how I felt, because I had been denying myself these creative instincts and these creative ideas for so long. To finally let them all out was freeing in a way that it's hard to put into words. I felt almost instantly better. It was it it again, it's so hard to almost put into words, because it was such a visceral feeling for me when I started writing this book, that it just took over my life in a way that it's, again, hard to explain. But I'm trying.
Yes. So, what age did you realize that you're good in writing?
When I wrote these what now is Talia Heir to the Fairy Realm and Talia on the Shore of the Sea. I wrote them all together. And because it was one kind of long arc going from introducing the characters to having her child to having the curse and all that. And I finished it. I had been kind of sort of editing it as I was writing. Then I gave it to my wife, and she read a couple chapters, and I was really scared about how she would react to it. And she said, "Oh, it's pretty good." And she just started editing it and working on it. We were working on it together, and that's when I kind of felt like, okay, this wasn't just something I was doing as a vanity project or something just for my own ego. I was actually, she was enjoying it. Um, I showed it to a couple other friends. They enjoyed it. It was so, and that's when I kind of realized that, oh, I had something here.
Oh, okay. Who influenced you in your writing?
I have so many influences. Going back to my childhood, we got Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings books and The Hobbit. My mom read those books to me when I was a kid, and I read them myself many, many times. I listened to there was an audio drama presentation of The Lord of the Rings, which I've listened to again countless times. Um, More as an author's, the author Catherine Kurtz, who wrote the Dearney series. It's a fantasy medieval Europe based on a race of people who have magical abilities that are more based on ceremonial magic, um, hypnotism, bit of telepathy, and that all influenced the magic in my books. The fairy magic is a lot based on telepathy, telekinesis, teleportation, a lot of ceremonial magic, a lot of very mystical, various. It's a very soft magic system, as a lot of people will put it. Catherine Kurtz has influenced me a lot. The writing of Janie Wurst, the very musicalness of her magical system, and just the very this not I guess the sensualness of her writing and the very so descriptive but also so very deep. Tad Williams with his Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn series, which really kind of almost redefined the fantasy genre. He took the idea of elves and kind of turned them on their head and just looked at it through a different lens. And that's always interesting to take for authors who take tropes like elves and dwarves and all that sort of things and turn them on their head and look at it through a different lens. And that's always so very, very inspiring. So those are probably the three most inspiring authors for me.
You describe your favorite authors, their writing. What is it, or what are they?
Characters you can believe in, characters you can find a connection to. Janie Wurst, for example, wrote a trilogy called The Cycle of Fire. It's about a young man who gets pulled into a war between sorcerers. And that was so very inspiring to me because I was a weak, nerdy kid, and this main character was a weak, nerdy, so so lacking in self-esteem, and his journey to be from becoming this little small teenager to becoming a very powerful sorcerer was very inspiring to me because the whole idea of ugly ducklings blossom into swans. So that inspired me a whole lot, and just the idea of that hero, that modified hero's journey is very appealing to me.
Wow, interesting. Joel, those characteristics is also included in your writing.
Yes, it's definitely a hero's journey for Talia because she's going from becoming this in the first book. She's a very not flighty, but she's young, but she's the queen's heir, so she's being groomed to be the queen of the fairies at eventually, and she's fighting for peace between the humans and the fairies who have been at war for centuries, either a cold war or a very very hot and very devastating war between them. And there's just recently the the conflict has ceased and they're trying to negotiate a lasting peace between them. And Talia wants to push that forward. That's why she pretty much takes up with Bastille, who is the heir of the human realm, who is the son of the king and will be king of the human realm too when his father dies. So that's and and her journey from becoming this from starting out as this kind of flighty kind of woman who makes a lot of mistakes and trusts the wrong people and is realizing what the world actually is from her kind of sheltered existence, moving out into the world and discovering that there's a whole lot of areas of gray and so many different colors to the world. It is a hero's journey for her, and but it's also a hero's journey for all the other characters that she brings along on this journey. And some of it is their journey to free themselves from her, and some of it is making peace to what she has become. And it's really a complicated story in ways for a lot of these characters, because they start out in one place, they're going to be in some place in the middle, they're going to be another place at the end. So I'm really interested in how those characters evolve and change the story, and how they react to what's going on around them, and the changes to the world.
Very well said, Mr. Joel. So, if you describe your writing, what is it?
It's a lot. I'm not a very descriptive writer in places, because I don't that confidence just isn't quite in me yet, but I do focus a lot on dialogue, on characters talking, characters discovering things and moving the plot forward through conversations. And that's what interests me a lot, because I've worked in retail for almost 30 years now, and I've been around a lot of people, a lot of conversations, had a lot of conversations with a lot of different people, and you can find out so much with sometimes with just a few words or a few glances or a few thoughts. And that's what interests me, is how characters react to each other, how you can start at one point in a conversation and end up in a totally different point at the end. And that's where my writing, I think, shines, is in the conversations, in the characterizations, in describing. Sometimes it's not even what people say, it's how they say it, or what they do when they're talking. It's the body language, it's all those things. So I think that's what my writing focuses on. I don't have pages and pages of description, because that's not really what interests me. It's the how characters work through their problems with each other, how big issues are boiled down to just how these two people talk.
Yes, interesting, Mr. Joel. Before we go on, I want to shout out to the people listening in Romania. Thank you so much, Romania. In Bucharest, I get 88% audience share. In Constanta, at 2%, Warsaw at 2%, Mureş at 2%, Maramureş at 2%, Cluj at 2%, and last but not the least, Timis at 2%. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast, because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world like Mr. Joel Flanagan. So, Mr. Joel, what is the best highlight of Talia?
I worked really hard on the relationship between Talia and Bastille. Bastille's the human, the son of the human king, and getting their relationship to feel like it legitimately blossoms, becomes love, and then becomes a betrayal. And I think that was one of the most important things in the first book, was making sure that that relationship, that romance, felt real and worked. And and then I think, and it's then in the later part of the book and in the next book, it's the relationship between Talia and her ladies and her soldiers, and how they become this found family, and how they work to create a world, create a safe place for Talia to have her child, and then how that safe place gets destroyed in book two. And then all the reactions and how all the characters go out in different directions, starting with book three. Book three is focusing on the fairy part of the story. And there'll be, actually there's two. I currently have two more books written. Actually, well, two and a half. I have another book, two books focused on the humans and the half fairies, and another on Talia and another character named Rose, who is the wife of the human king and gets pulled into this too. So it's all it's a big ranging story, and it has a lot of different plot lines, and it's kind of confusing at times, and I have to really focus on it, but sometimes I just focus on the characters in front of me, the books in front of me, and what's immediately happening, and kind of let the rest. I'm a very much a pantser when it comes to plotting. That I'm discovering. I kind of know where it begins, where it ends, but the middle is, I figure that out as I write.
You are the writer that they called architect. So you plan first. the
Not well, not. I know I have a basic framework. I knew when I started out with the Talia, I knew these certain things had to happen along the course of it. I knew the curse had to happen toward the middle, and I knew these other things that had to happen, and it was the journey getting there. So kind of an architect, kind of a gardener. It all gets kind of mushed up and into my own creative process.
That'd be awesome. So are you the writer that easy for you to name your characters?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. When I did the outline, when the original outline, I had the name Maleficent in there, and of course I can't use that because that's a Disney only thing. So I started looking through all the older stories that inspired what became Sleeping Beauty, because there's so many of these related tales, Germanic folk tales, a lot of the Brothers Grimm stuff, and I found in one of the inspiring stories the name Talia. And from the very moment I saw that name, I knew exactly who Talia was. She still surprises me in some points, and she's going to continue to surprise me, but I knew who she was. I really got a handle on her when I found that name. And a lot of times when I do name a character, that inspires who they are. And sometimes it'll be their name will inspire who they are and who they become. And sometimes it's who they are inspires their name, because fairy names and the half fairy names sometimes are very fairy names are very fluid. They change their names through their whole lives, as they have a name when they're a child, name when they're a teenager, a name as an adult, and they may change their names a couple more times as they go through their life, as their roles change, as their beliefs change. So it's it, it's very fluid sometimes, but sometimes yes, when I get that name, I really get a really good feeling on who that character is.
Yes, and according to Catherine Bowser, uh, beautiful world with an enticing plot and characters. Wow. So
Yeah.
let's talk about the main character of your story.
Yes, Talia. Talia is the, as I said, she's the heir to the fairy realm. She's the queen. She's the daughter of Queen Zelendane, who is the queen of the fairy realm. Talia is her daughter and has her only daughter, her only child, and has been raised from birth to become the queen. And and she's very strong. She's very opinionated. Her mother says she can either any problem that she's faced with, she can either find a way around it or she can find a way through it. So, and that is reflected in a lot of her choices and her relationship with her ladies, who are her, I guess you'd call them ladies in waiting, but they're her really extended family. And also with her relationship with her second mother, Flora, who has again raised her, been there for her since she was born, has been that second mother figure to her. And but Talia has these moments after her relationship with Bastille kind of implodes, and he betrays her. She has a lot of doubt and doesn't know whether she should have done this at all, that she may have made this tremendous mistake, which is going to maybe push the fairy realm and human realm back into war. And those doubts and those worries about what her choices mean for her people, for her immediate family, for her people as a whole, for the fairies as a whole, really weighs on her a lot. And the first two books really followed that journey from her. It's a coming of age story in a way, and it shows that progress as she figures out who she is, as she has her child, and as all these events of book two, which is book two is very intense in some parts. Her journey isn't done yet.
Oh, okay. The journey, of course, many books to come, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes, and according to Janine K, well crafted characters and magic. So, what are the magic that you input in the story?
I The magic in the books is kind of wish fulfillment in a way, that the fairies have. It's a lot of telekinesis, telepathy. They can communicate with, fairies can communicate telepathically between each other, either through just looking at each other or through touch. They have teleportation through the fairy rings. They can teleport from one ring to another ring, sort of a mashup of Star Trek transporters and the transfer portals that appear in the Dearney books by Catherine Kurtz. But it's a lot. It's kind of wish fulfillment in a way that I have you ever sat at a table and there was something across the counter that you couldn't reach and you just wish you could just pull it to you. And I do that a lot because fairies use their magic very casually, to open doors, to grab cups, to pick up clothes off the floor. And but there's also a lot of ceremonial magic, casting wards, as protection for when you're doing deeper workings, and to wards to protect yourself, wards to protect a small area or a large area. And um, fairies working together to create bigger weavings or magic, and to protect larger areas, to create magical shields over themselves or over bigger areas like a camp or or a house, or even with lots of fairies working together, a whole castle or a stronghold. Now it's I just love the idea of using magic, and how it how it affects the world and how it affects their thinking. And it's it's just fun. It's just fun to be able to use magic in very fantastical ways, and sometimes very normal ways too, very casual ways.
Definitely. I hope we can do all those magic too as a human.
That
That
would
will
be
be
great.
fun. That will be fantastic and great. According to DB Polly, well done, first book of a series. Oh my goodness, I love this. So, as a first book, as a your debut novel, how many days and month you wrote this book?
I started in September 2019, and I wrote the first two books together. I finished about in March, or I think it was March of 2020. So however long that was. And it,
Oh,
and
okay.
it was and then it took another, several months to edit it and decide that it was too big, and we needed to find a splitting point between it, and we found a pretty good one. And it's a bit, and so book one ends in a bit of a, well, not a bit, a pretty big cliffhanger. So you definitely want to read book one and then read book two right away, because it's one big story, um, across two books.
Yes, and according to Polly, the book is well written and develops characters in exciting ways. How did you do the story to make your readers saying that it well written?
A lot of that goes to my wife, who's my editor, and all her notes and all her suggestions. And we spent a lot of time working on individual chapters, individual sections, that, word choice, this would be a better word here, in or this would be a better way to say this. And her just pushing me to be a better writer and to have a better voice. And also the finding the things that she was confused about. And if she was confused about it, obviously and she's not a big fantasy reader at all. She's more science fiction. But if she was confused about it, then definitely other readers are going to be confused about it. And we needed to figure out either a better way to say it, or a better way to explain it, or to just work on it, just make it tighter. And just, so that was always, she was always pushing me to do it better, to write it more, either add more description or make it tighter, and just kind of go into the very point of the conversation. And so that's that's how I crafted it. And a lot of the credit goes to her, because if I hadn't had her, I don't think I'd be at the point I am now. So
Yes, definitely. I couldn't. And according to Matthew Grannemann, brilliant prose and engaging story. Wow, I like this one. How did you comment on that?
um I don't know. It amazes me sometimes that this thing I wrote pretty much for myself, and to just explore these characters, but also to talk about, social issues of our time right now, but shown through the lens of fairies and half fairies and humans. And there's just a way, because that's what all good science fiction and fantasy does. It shows you a lens to look at our world, but through 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 a different lens. And because the fairies are broken down, there's three types of fairies: iridescent winged, feather winged, and leather winged. And they're very, it's a very class centric society, that you're pretty much, what wings you're born with dictate what class of society you're going to be into, what you're gonna do with your life. Because iridescents are mostly, are a lot of the highborns. They're the priests. They're the leaders. They're the lords. Feather wings are pretty much your middle class. A lot of the servants. There are soldiers within the feather wings. Um, and then the leather wings, for the most part, are also a middle class, but most of them gravitate toward the soldier role, and form the fairy armies. But there are also some who go into fairies are long-lived, so they have a lot of opportunities to do a lot of things in their lives. And some of the leatherwings will gravitate into other roles, and but it is still a very class. It is still a very class society, and it kind of amazes me that people really react well to what I'm doing, because I wrote it for myself. I wrote it for my wife. I wrote it to just kind of explore these ideas and to play with magic and to just have fun with it at times, and to kind of work through some of the thoughts I have about modern society or my own relationships with people, relationships with my family, relationships with my wife. So it's very personal, and I'm glad that people respond to that.
Yes, congratulations, Mr. Joel. So before we go on, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, our third season with Chef Alessandro, one of the executive chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. Plus one more, I have a new podcast coming this June called Comedy 101. This podcast is created to empower laughter, people, and remove stress in our daily lives. So please do listen. Comedy 101 this coming June with the one and only Mike Lucas, one of the best comedian of all time. So
That's cool.
Mr. Joel, what are the preparation that you did in writing this book?
Um, a little bit of preparation. I looked a lot into the original Sleeping Beauty myths. I looked a lot into kind of the how those fairy tales and folk tales kind of formed, and took ideas from there. Um, and it was I'm a very much a pantser, so I was kind of writing it and then looking up things as I discovered I needed that information. Like I was trying, a lot of times I will look up, try in naming some things, I would look up different languages and try to figure out, okay, what's this, what is something in various languages, and try to adapt that into my world. Or I or went in the Rose book. It's a very human centric world, and I was trying to figure out how humans who have no magic at all and can't fly would fight against fairies who can obviously fly, and trying to figure out the best way that they would do that. And I figured out, well, they would figure out some way of like anti-aircraft fire, that they would develop catapults and those sort of things to fight against the flying enemies. And I kind of got deep into the technology of catapults and trebuchets and ballistas and all those medieval siege weapons and how they worked, and how I could adapt them into my own world. So I kind of do my brain research as I go, as I discover I need something or I don't understand something. So that's kind of my process.
Yes, very well said. As a debut novel, what did you learn from it?
I learned so much, but sometimes it's hard to put into words. Um, I learned that I need to be more descriptive in some places and less descriptive in other places. That I need to focus on the individual characters' emotions at times, and really focus on their journey. And I needed to focus on some of my action scenes, because I was very hesitant on writing battle or fight scenes because I don't have that much experience with it. I've I've watched action movies and I've watched those sort of things, but I don't have any direct um, experience with it. So a lot of that was a lot of thinking about it a lot, and watching movies and kind of trying to adapt that into my writing and into my thinking. So I think I learned, as because there's only a couple fight scenes in the first book. There's a few more in book 2, and there's a lot more in book 3. Will be book 3, and I feel like I'm getting more and more confident in writing those as I, adapt my craft and figure out my strengths and figure out my weaknesses. And again, the strength of my dialogue is something that we just keep working on and pushing and just making the conversation sound natural. And that's something my wife is discovering as she's doing the audiobooks, is she's changing little things as she's reading, because it just flows more naturally. So, and that's something we're learning together as we write these books. And I at one point I kind of tossed around the idea that she would be co-author, but she really wanted the title of editor. So that's what she is. And she's credited on the title page as, edited by JJ, who is my wife.
Yes. Why did you chosen fairies as your main characters or main character?
Because of all the things you can do with them. There's so much variety in my fairies, that there's so much difference between them, between the iridescents, between the feather wings, between the leather wings, and how they have their, in a way, their own cultures and their own ideas and their own beliefs within the overall fairy realm. So there's so much things to play with. And you can play with the ideas of, class warfare, but not exactly that, in a way that, featherwings kind of, they stick together, leatherwings stick together, iridescents stick together, and there's, some mixing, but there's not much. So you can play with that. You can play with those relationships between characters of different wings. And then the magic of fairies, because I so love just using magic and using the telekinesis, using the telepathy, that two characters can be talking to other people. They can be having a telepathic conversation with each other as a back channel. They can be doing all these things, and it becomes, you have so much different things you can play with fairies, so many different ways of being, that they can do so many things, and it's just fun. And that's what writing for me is. It's so much fun. I just love making connections between things as I write. And it's that high you get sometimes when you realize, oh, this is a great idea, but it also links with this other idea I had over here. And it's just so fun. It is just so I'm just so enthusiastic about it, and it just makes me so happy to sit down and write a character and discover who they are in the course of a couple pages or a chapter or a couple chapters, and discovering things about them that I didn't know but fits perfectly in their character and fits perfectly in their world.
Wow. Oh, what a magic indeed. Can you please invite our listeners to buy all your books?
Oh, definitely. The best place to get information about me is at my website, servantsofthemoonandsun.com, all run together, no spaces or underscores. That's servantsofthemoonandsun.com. I'm also very active on Twitter at servant and I post a lot of my snippets. I interact with a lot of the indie authors. I also post a lot of raccoon pictures just because it makes my wife smile and I love to make her happy. Also at my website, you can sign up for my mailing list. Excuse me, not mailing list. My wife corrects me on this all the time. It's a newsletter. It's a
Yes.
newsletter, and that comes out twice a month. And when you sign up for it, you can get a free short story, which is a little bit of a prequel. It details Talia's first heartbreak that happens before the beginning of book 1. And it's just a little fun 300 word short story that I wrote for a competition. a couple years ago, which I'm very proud of. And it introduces a character that is mentioned in the books, but is not, but we don't see her in only in this short story and in future books. She's going to be a character in the fairy books going forward. So that's where you can find me. You know, Twitter is probably the best way to connect with me, or through my website. I have an email address, joel@servantsofthemoonandsun.com. You can email me, and I will definitely respond.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Joel because if you support him, he will give more fairies to come. All right, Mr. Joel.
Yes, yes, they do. Yes, I will keep writing, and I will keep telling the stories of Talia and her ladies and her soldiers, and the half fairies and the humans, and it's all great. It's all wonderful. Thank you all
Yes.
very much.
Welcome, people. See you soon.